The Los Angeles Rams in 2021 achieved Super Bowl glory. They went all in. However, that Super Bowl window shut almost immediately in 2022 as they suffered injuries to star players such as Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp, and Matthew Stafford. And now it seems we are looking at the dying embers of a franchise ready to hit the reset button. And welcome back to the channel on What's Crack-a-Lackin'. It's your boy Broshmo. Just in case you did not know so, go ahead, become a bro and subscribe. Leave this video a thumbs up if you enjoy the content. As always, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let's have that nice, beautiful football discourse. But we're continuing my deep dive series as we go through every NFL team and see how they're going to do in 2023, at least how I project them to do. And we're doing this in the order of a draft order, which means I got the Rams picking number 2 overall, but we're going to be going over the coaches, the coaching scheme first and foremost. So let's go ahead, get into that sucker. Looking at the coaching staff, as there's a lot of holdover. I mean, there was questions that Sean McVay could leave this team, but he decides to return. This is about his 6th, 7th year as coach for the Rams. He comes from the Shanahan coaching tree. So yeah, we're going to be expecting that wide zone scheme that is just run rampant over the NFL. But he brings in a new OC as Liam Cohen decided to go back to Kentucky and be offensive coordinator there. But he brings in Mike LaFleur, who was formerly the offensive coordinator for the New York Jets. But he has a bit of he's got a bit of expertise with the system that's been implemented here in Los Angeles, as he was the passing game coordinator for Kyle Shanahan just a few seasons ago. Now, what to expect with the offense? Nothing out of the usual what we've seen the previous seasons under Sean McVay. I mean, this is a wide zone blocking scheme. They like to throw a little bit inside zone in there, and they use a lot of motion, a lot of pre-snap movement to get to basically give the defense similar looks, but they run different plays out of those alignments and out of those motions. So it's to confuse the defense. However, we did see since the arrival of Matthew Stafford that the team particularly wanted to basically put a lot of that on Matthew Stafford's arm. So we saw a lot more pass and not as many run plays. This team was typically pre-Stafford in the top 10 in terms of designed run plays. That hadn't been the case the last 2 seasons. And now with Stafford being banged up, another year older, you got to question, okay, maybe do they want to get more back to relying a bit on the run game to set up this offense? And I think we will see that. I kind of anticipated it last year, but injuries happened and such, so maybe we will see that this season. We are bringing back Raheem Morris as defensive coordinator for the Rams. I know last year wasn't an ideal year for the Rams, but to be fair, the talent, and we'll see, this isn't that great on the defense outside of Aaron Donald. But what we're going to see with this incarnation of Raheem Morris is, or at least what we've seen the previous 2 seasons, is a odd front 3-4 base. They like to run too high, and they're very blitz heavy. They rely on soft zone coverage, and we've seen the ability of Raheem Morris to change things up. I mean, just look at his pedigree working under Monty Kiffin, Jim Haslett. You got Dan Quinn. Under Dan Quinn, this cat was running man heavy, cover 3, single high. So he has the ability to adapt depending on what he's getting from his personnel. It's just, again, the depth on this team. We're gonna see it with the defense. It don't be good. So you got to question: can good coaching overcome the lack of depth on this roster? Because it's bad. It do be bad. But first, I want to give a shout out to Underdog Fantasy. Thank you so much for sponsoring the video. Underdog Fantasy is currently one of the most premier fantasy betting apps, and they got a best ball tournament with $15 million in cash prizes. So if you sign up at Underdog Fantasy using promo code Broshmo, they will match your first deposit up to $100. Remember, promo code Broshmo when you sign up, and they will match your first deposit up to $100. And as always, bet responsibly, my friends. Let's go ahead, get into this offense as it don't be good. It don't be good. But honestly, I think we could go on ahead. Let's just look at the starters. And I have this offense ranked as a bottom unit, which means they're in like that 26th to 32nd in the league, but it could be definitely a lot better than that. The biggest question is, can the offensive line be good? Can they protect Stafford? Can they open things up for the running game? I truly believe offensively, this team could be a lot better than how a lot of us peg them right now. As they bring back Matthew Stafford, can he put this team on his shoulders? Well, once again, he will get a healthy Cooper Kupp back. We've seen some positive things from the other playmakers on this roster as well, such as Cam Akers when he said like, hey, I don't want to be traded, it's fine, let's go ahead, let's get this thing done. Like, we've seen Cam Akers flourish for this team. Cooper Kupp serves a very important role. He's kind of put slot receivers on the spot in the NFL. You have Van Jefferson, who is likely to be the starter on the outside, who is very capable, just solid receiver. And then kind of the emergence of Ben Skoranek, who's a bigger receiver, not a guy that's going to get open a ton. He kind of like relishes the contested catch. That's kind of his game. But they do have playmakers that we probably will see less on the field, because like Skoranek's like a very versatile body type. He's a guy that you could work in as like a downhill blocker in the backfield. You could, again, this is a team that likes to play with motion. You can maneuver him wherever. But Tutu Atwell actually flashed last year. Like, I wasn't that high on Tutu Atwell coming out, but if you really like key in on, okay, we got a very high-end gadget player, let's use that speed to our advantage for him to create after the catch, have fun with jet sweeps and whatnot, but a guy that can be a very reliable vertical target for them. They also drafted Puka Nuka out of BYU, not necessarily the fastest guy, but just an exceptionally smooth athlete. Another guy you could play around with jet sweeps. You could even line up in the backfield and have him take some carries. He was someone who worked as a not just a receiver, but a running back for that squad. Let's go ahead and move back so you could actually, there we go, see some of the guys on here. So, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, Ben Skoranek. Then you got Puka Nuka, Tutu Atwell. Question is, who's the sixth receiver if they hold on to 6-1, which I believe they will. And I think the first few names that come to mind, obviously Demarcus Robinson, journeyman, just a reliable depth guy at this point in his career. Xavier Smith, a bit smaller, but just a speedster out of, was it Florida A&M, I believe? But you got a speedster there. And then Tyler Johnson, I'm going to be honest, he has jumped around so much the past year. I would be just ecstatic to see him make it in camp. But I think he's someone that could be in the contention. If I was going to give y'all another name out there, it's like you actually can't see him on here. So let's move the screen real quick. Well, there you see Tyler Johnson, but it's Tyler Hudson out of Louisville. Big-bodied receiver, 6 foot, 6'1", I believe 200 pounds. Was very successful at Louisville this past season. Didn't really get talked a ton about during the draft process, at least as much as I think he should have. Maybe he's like an outside shot to make this roster a dark horse. But there are some playmakers. You go to like tight end, you have Tyler Higbee. And then outside of that, you just have a bunch of tight end twos that are actually good at various different things. I mean, Hunter Long never really shined with Miami, part of the Jalen Ramsey trade. Kind of a throw-in, really. But someone who's got a good body type, could be a good blocker and provides a little bit vertically, kind of runs not the best route tree, but there's a couple of routes he runs exceptionally well. Bryce Hopkins, a bit more put together as a pass catcher, but undersized, someone you're not going to take serious as a blocker or as an extra blocker. And then Davis Allen, he's kind of the sweet in between. He's, I would say, a better receiver than Hunter Long, but he's definitely a better blocker than Bryson Hopkins, but he's kind of the in-between. They just drafted him out of Clemson this past season, so definitely a name to watch out for. They also bring in Christian Sims, someone who I liked. I believe he was out of Bowling Green. Let's take a quick gander at that. Yeah, the Bowling Green, but a bit undersized at 243. So there's playmakers there. We talked about their depth. Or we talked about the potential playmaker, at least they have there, at Cam Akers, who was very successful during the last part of last season. Kyron Williams being healthy, but more of a receiving back. You could say the same thing about Ronnie Rivers, but he also offers some stuff up as a return man. But the addition of Zach Evans is huge. Someone who, if Akers continues with some of his ploys, that's not the word I'm looking for, antics, where it's like, yeah, you know what, I don't think I'm going to use enough. Can I get a trade, please? Like, Evans is someone who could actually step up into that role immediately. I think he's a bit more well put together. He's more balanced than Kyron Williams, who's really the only other guy I think has a shot there. Ronnie Rivers is just depth at this point. But Williams, who, not great launch speed, good receiver, good hands, okay running, running back, ball carrier. Zach Evans, I would say, it wouldn't surprise me if he kind of usurped Kyron Williams, at least in the early down usage. So looking at that, like they have some capable playmakers. I think this offense could be better than how a lot of us suspect it will be. But let's take a look at the offensive line here. I do have one rookie that Green designates a rookie. I have Steve Avila, but Logan Bruss, who had a red shirt last season because of injury, there's a shot he ends up getting the start there at right guard. So you have two very unexperienced young players there at guard. Brian Allen coming off of a banged up season where he kind of reverted to how he played the first 3 seasons under his contract. Remember, he got extended because he had a breakout year in his 4th season, and then last season banged up, play kind of slipped off. Joe Noteboom, as far as we know, Noteboom, not great. They extended him in hopes that he can be the heir apparent to Andrew Whitworth, and I don't really think that's been the case. Like, you're kind of honestly, pardon me, banking that he could at the very least be average. Really can. Like, he's a solid run blocker. What he does, like, as a pass blocker, still putting it together, but at some point it's like you gotta hope it clicks, and because if not, then you should be looking for a replacement either in the roster or via free agency, via the draft. Rob Havenstein, the most consistent player on this offensive line there at right tackle. I wouldn't say Havenstein's like an elite player, but he's an above average player, just a solid player at this point of his career. So this is what I anticipate, at least what the starters for the offensive line are going to be for most of the season. However, if we really dig into it, looking at the rest of the players on that offensive line, you can make a case, at least with Logan Bruss, that Shelton Coleman, who I believe started primarily at right guard last season. He switched between that and center because of the Brian Allen injury, so that kind of makes sense. So you got to expect he's going to be in the running for that right guard spot. You really got to anticipate that. So we could definitely see him maybe start over Logan Bruss. I believe they're pretty high in Steve Avila, who was at TCU. Huge body, but a much better mover than you'd expect for someone his size. Looking at the other depth, I like the addition of Warren McClennan, someone who's okay size, okay athlete, just looks like solid player. Will he ever be a great starter for the squad? Probably not, but he's someone, if he's like the 5th best player on your offensive line, I would feel pretty good about the rest of my offensive line. That's kind of the level of player, at least the ceiling I see for a Warren McClendon. Outside of that, there's not a lot to like here. Tremaine, what is it? Ankrum, former Clemson guard there. He's really depth at this point. We haven't seen a ton of him. Like what, last season, only 2 snaps. How many snaps does he have throughout his whole career here in Los Angeles? Yeah, a whole freaking 5 snaps over the course of his career. So I'm not expecting much out of him. You have Arlick Jackson, former Iowa tackle. He was actually the tackle there with Tristan Wirfs back there at Iowa. He's actually a pretty good fit for the scheme here, but someone you kind of pray someone you have to start. But outside of that, there's this offensive line not looking good, not looking great. It really isn't. And you gotta hope, can at least this offensive line be good enough to win some ball games? Because I think the defense is going to struggle mightily. I really, really do. So can this offense, like, let's say this defense ends up allowing, like, I think a good safe estimate is maybe like 23 to 24 points a game. I could see this defense allowing. Can this offense put up enough to keep them in ball games here? Can Matthew Stafford stay healthy? If you're looking at his backups there, they have Brett Ripon, who played for Denver last year. No, I mean, do you throw Stetson Bennett to the fire if worse comes to worse with Matthew Stafford and he gets banged up? I wasn't a big believer in Stetson Bennett. I mean, I know the dude is a gamer, but that was in college. And quite frankly, it was under the best team in college football. So that's something that will translate. So overall, I think this offense will probably trend towards like somewhere between like 17 to like, let's say 27, depending on if they can stay healthy. That's kind of where I don't think this is a team that could be a top flight offense unless the offensive line steps up tremendously this season. So there's the caveat to that. Let's go ahead, move towards the defense. These are my defensive starters for the Los Angeles Rams. And we got to start with, it's Aaron Donald and who? Not a whole lot of anything. I ended up putting Marquise Copeland as the guy that will see the most snaps. Next to him, keep in mind they lost Greg Gaines to Tampa. I believe he went to Tampa Bay. But if we're looking at like the other guys who played on the interior there, you have Jonah Williams. He wasn't any good. Let's go ahead, pull up the depth chart. Bobby Brown, I believe, played like 150 snaps last season, but he's another dude, 164 snaps last season. But he's someone that actually could play that nose tackle role. I would say Copeland is capable of doing that. I believe he had 100 snaps at nose tackle. So there's a couple of other guys that can do that for them if they really, really need them to. But there's not a lot to talk about outside of Aaron Donald. I mean, I guess there's a few rookies we could mention. Actually, Laryl Murchison, former NC State player, played with Tennessee. I think he's a solid depth piece. Does he make the roster? That'll be kind of interesting. I feel like they'll probably stick with some of the guys that they're more familiar with. Jonah Williams, Marquise Copeland, Bobby Brown, even Ernest Brown. But they did draft Desjuan Johnson at Toledo, but he's another guy that's this undersized penetrator, who you could probably say the same thing with Kobe Turner, who is more of an undersized sub 300 penetrator. So it's just going to be interesting. I think this is probably going to be one of the worst run defenses in the league when it comes to pass rush. I think the pass rush, at least on the interior, is going to be carried via Aaron Donald, one of the best players of our generation. Because, I mean, if we're looking at it, yeah, the only other person to have double-digit pressures on the interior was Greg Gaines, and he's now gone. But looking at the edge rushers here, the starters I have listed, that's the offense. Whoopsies. There we go. Are Brian Young, who is a rookie out of Tennessee. I was pretty high on out of the 3rd round. And you got Michael, was it Hochek, who played a lot of snaps last season. He really did. And he was actually pretty solid. 24 pressures, 5 sacks, but he's probably not more than a rotation player. He really and he comes in at like an interesting weight. Like, I believe he was in like the 290 range. Michael, go check. Let's see here. Let's see what the Rams got him listed at. Yo, is he really up to 300? They got him listed at 310. So that's going to be interesting how they utilize this cat. Because he actually played predominantly outside of the tackles. So it's going to be very interesting. They get a versatile piece there. But they also got, they brought in a lot of younger pass rushers, as you'll see here. Not just Byron Young, but they bring in O'Shane Mathis, who had a stellar Shrine Bowl, a guy that showed great length, 34-inch arms, a good burst and explosiveness. They bring in Nick Hampton, who's more built like a DPR type of player, but another cat with very good explosiveness and length. So how involved do these guys get on the outside? Because outside of them, there's not much to write home about. There really isn't. So I felt it was safe knowing the versatility of Michael Hochek, which, yes, I know I'm mispronouncing his name, guys. I know. I'm sorry. All 22, just they don't have the commentary. So I haven't listened to his name prior to this, but I'm excited about Byron Young. He is someone who's still relatively new to football. He was a walk-on at Georgia Military Institute, like community college, where he walked on, and it was his first time really playing football outside of his senior year of high school. He eventually goes to Tennessee, and it's like, the thing was, man, he didn't look overwhelmed by the amount of talent, by the that upgrade in competition. So I'm very excited for Byron Young, man. I think he's going to be one of these young guys that step up for this roster. At linebacker, we're going to be honest, there's not much to talk about here. Outside of Ernest Jones, it's really a toss-up who plays next to Ernest Jones. Ernest Jones last season had he had over 700 snaps. The cat that they listed and started next to him, only about 8 snaps last season. Yeah, 8 snaps last year on defense, and Christian Roseboom. But outside of that, man, like, they got a lot of either rookie players, but they're all UDFAs, or you have Jack Hamill, who was a UDFA the year prior. So DeAndre Square probably likely makes this roster because of it. If you're looking for a name maybe to watch out for as we move back to this, it would be Jaden Woodbay out of Boston College right here. If you didn't know, he was a former safety box guy who I think making the leap to linebacker is kind of the right call for him. But you're looking at this front 7, and you're really relying on a lot of rookies to maybe step up. Guys like Byron Young, Nick Hampton, O'Shane Mathis, DeAndre Square, Kobe Turner. You're kind of banking, hopefully, 1 or 2 of those guys can step up and be solid starters. But you have a ton of inexperience at linebacker outside of Ernest Jones. And yeah, Aaron Donald, can he stay healthy? He was already borderline considering retirement. And it doesn't get prettier on the back end of things. This is a big reason why I have this team listed as a bottom ranked defense, as this backfield, defensive backfield for the Rams is atrocious. The starters I have there are Darion Kendrick, who was like a 4.7 guy out of Clemson. Wanted to say Georgia, right? Oh, I feel like I covered that draft so long ago. So, okay, he played for Clemson and Georgia. That's why. Okay, I was like, why am I blending those two together? But he was someone who didn't test out well last year in terms of his play, was better than probably you would expect from a rookie starter, or even a just someone who was a 6th rounder. Doesn't mean you're in a good spot though. And then Robert Rochelle is this cat that they've been developing out of Central Arkansas, who has just these insane athletic traits compared to his size. And it's just, he was an exceptionally raw prospect in terms of what he did last year. He only had 27 snaps. That's the guy. So these are the two that are going to be your stars at corner. It sounds like it sounds horrible. This sounds like this defense is going to be giving up a lot of plays. A lot. On top of that, like, you look at some of the guys they lost in Jalen Ramsey. You look at the safeties, Taylor Rapp, Nick Scott. They lost considerable talent in the secondary in general. They do bring back Kobe Durant, who was a rookie last season out of South Carolina State, I believe, who played exceptionally well. Came up with 3 picks, playing primarily in the slot, and only allowing 183 yards is kind of bonkers. It really, really is. So it sounds like he's probably going to be the guy mainly manning up the slot, though he did see some time on the outside. If we're going to look at the depth of this squad, at least on the outside, you're going to look at some of the guys they drafted, and Travis Hodges Tomlinson, someone who's probably his ideal sub-package player who will play inside, or maybe they even push him for playing time on the outside, considering who they have there, and Robert Rochelle and Darion Kendrick. So THT, man, I'm really excited. If he was this is the right situation for him to go to, where he's going to be able to compete, and he's in a system that is pretty friendly to smaller corners. On top of that, looking at some of the other players they brought in, and there's not a lot to mention. Like, there's Sean Jolly, former Appalachian State, another undersized receiver. So the corner position looks pretty dismal. And let's continue and take a look at that safety position, because remember, Taylor Rapp, Nick Scott, gone. Jordan Fuller, who got banged up last year, kind of the head man there. You got Russ Yeast, who played a lot of snaps last year because of injury. But even then, man, I don't think he's really anything special. Played over 100 snaps. So the question is, will his spot be contested by guys like Quinton Lake, who I absolutely loved out of last year's draft? A guy that you knew was going to be a really good special teamer, someone that could line up in the slot, play in the box, he could play deep. So look for him to be able to push for a starting spot. And even Jason Taylor out of Oklahoma State, more of a big hitter, so more of a box option. But this is a team that tended to love to use multiple safeties. There's other guys, though, there on the roster we could probably talk about that could be good names in camp, like Rashad Torrance, big box safety size. That's kind of his role at the NFL. Quindale Johnson out of Memphis, decent range, a guy that's played that's just shown a lot of versatility there at Memphis, playing in the slot, playing in the box, playing deep, playing outside even a little bit. So I mean, that's kind of just being optimistic, though. Like, this team is bad. Like, it is bad. So this defense, like, okay, let's take a look in terms of points allowed. Points allowed defense, NFL 2022. And I mean, if they're going to be at the bottom of the league, like last year, the Bears defense allowed over 27 points a game. You had the Cardinals at 26. Where were the Rams last year? Okay, they were at 22. This defense got infinitely worse, so they're probably more likely in that 24 to 27 range. Can the offense keep up? with how bad this defense is likely going to be is the biggest question. So I guess this kind of brings me to the part of the video where I give you my season predictions, my 2023 predictions for the Rams. So let's go ahead and get into that, as they're projected right now. 6-5 is the over and under via Vegas. And I am more confident in taking the under, but it wouldn't surprise me if this team somehow won 7 or 8 games next year. I have them at 3-4, 14. Again, if I'm making a draft order off this, then I kind of have to predict every game. I think they could probably be better than a 3-win team. And I think probably 5 wins is more likely, but that still puts them over the Vegas 6.5 mark. So I would bet the under on the Rams. Let's go through the schedule, because based on my predictions, the Rams have the 11th hardest schedule in the NFL. So not at all ideal. I have them being 2-6 at home. They have 1 win over a winning team. But let's get into it, as they open the year with the Seahawks, with the Rams. Like, that sucks. You couldn't get the Cardinals, the easiest team in your division. You couldn't get the Cardinals. But then they have to face the Bengals. This is a tough first 3 games. These were all very good playoff teams a year ago. The most winnable game here is probably the Seahawks, and that's not me trying to discredit the Seahawks. That's just how tough those opening 3 games are. They get the Colts, is where I have their first win. Colts, I imagine, will be a better team by the end of the year than they are to begin it. You get the Eagles, and finally you get the Cardinals. I have you having a win there. I believe I have you splitting with the Cardinals. You get the Seahawks, and this is coming off a bye. So I said the Seahawks, the Steelers. So you get the Steelers, who are coming off a bye. Not ideal, but at least you get it at home. The Cowboys, Packers, either of those are very winnable games. So, best case scenario, man, this team, like I said, this team could be a 7-8 win team. They get the bye. I have them winning out of the bye against the Seahawks. I think they're going to split with the Cardinals. I think both those teams are particularly bad. Then you get the Browns, the Ravens. You get Washington coming off their bye week. Shoot, you get the Ravens coming off their bye week. Not ideal. Saints. And then you finish the year with the Giants and the Niners. I have the Rams as my second worst team, technically speaking, coming out of not just the division, but the NFL. But it is a tough road. I think they got one of the harder schedules in football. Can they stay healthy is going to be a huge part. How much of this offense can they really put on Matthew Stafford's arm, which ended up failing them last season? Can the offense step it up? Can the offense be better? The offensive line specifically, because they have playmakers there. Can the defense be good? Who's offering them pass rush outside of Aaron Donald? You'd be like, okay, right, Nick Hampton, Byron Young. And it's okay, they're rookies though. You look at the secondary, it's an absolute mess. They lost too much. And they honestly, they lost their 3 best players in the secondary. You have Jordan Fuller coming off an injury. The secondary looks pee-pee poo-poo. That's just the case. That's just the reality. So it's going to be interesting because I believe the Rams will have their draft pick. If I am correct about that, they will. This is the first year they've had their draft pack or first round draft pick in 5 years, 6 years, something like that. Yeah. And it's going to be probably a top 5 pick, which at that point, do you just draft a quarterback and be like, all right, well, this Matthew Stafford thing was nice. We got a Super Bowl out of it, but let's go ahead. Let's move on. Let's build for the future. That's going to be the question there. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. I think the coach in there is really good for the Rams. I think schematically they have very good coordinators, very good coach. I think just systematically this team looks pretty darn good, but the mere lack of depth Like you're only gonna be able to get so much out of this offense, so much out of this defense, in particularly. Like it will be interesting. But again, let me know what you think in the comment section below. That's it for the video. Go ahead, do the YouTube thing as always. Until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.